to do an international piece, and since he's over in the Middle East, he's going to explain a little bit more about how things are over there, his experiences. You remember last meeting, those of you that were here, we talked about Bethlehem University, which is in the Middle East, but it's kind of a separate entity from some of the rest of the Middle East, and Brother Matt will explain that. So he's going to share his story, and I really invite you at any point, if you have a question, raise your hand, but you'll certainly be open to any questions and comments you might have, and I think you'll find this really interesting. So, Brother Matt, take it away, please.
All right, sounds good. Thanks again, all of you, for inviting me to come this evening and speak about, my story and about what I'm doing now. It doesn't seem that long ago that I was, sitting in the same room where you all are now, involved in ministry at St. Mary's. At the time when I was a student there about 8 to 10 years ago, we were actually using that space where you're sitting now as the chapel, because they were doing renovations to the chapel. And we didn't have Lasallian Collegians really as it is now, but I'm grateful to see that the group is back together again. But I came to St. Mary's, as Brother Larry said, from Wisconsin. I'm from La Crosse, Wisconsin, just down the road from you there in Winona. And I grew up in a Catholic family, very active in our parish. I was an altar server. I sang in the choir. And when I finished school, I went to public school for 13 years. I just really wanted to explore my faith because it had been so important to me as I was growing up, especially as I got into my later years of high school. And so I applied to a couple of different Catholic universities, Edgewood and Madison, and then also, of course, Viterbo in La Crosse. But I came to St. Mary's, and I really just love the community. Just a great place. I mean, the setting is beautiful, and everyone I met on campus was just so welcoming. And so when I came in the fall of 2010, I just felt right at home. As I mentioned, I was a Spanish major. I worked in the admissions office. I gave tours and worked there. Anybody work in the admission office now? You do? Okay, I'm trying to think who was even still there. Maybe Joanne, Nicole, Suzanne. Yeah, those are the ones that I think are still there that I remember. But I have great memories of working there. I was also in the band. Anybody in the band? You okay? The Dr. H, of course. Yeah, I played clarinet. So I really enjoyed being a part of that. Every Monday, Wednesday night, we got together. So that was just a really great way to, really get involved in the campus. And I was also very involved in campus ministry. I sang in the choir for Mass, for the 11 a.m. Mass. And I also was involved in soul trips. Has anybody done a soul trip? Yeah, I did 2 of them, actually. I did one to the U.S.-Mexico border. And I also did one to inner city St. Louis. Just great ways, to really serve and get out of the community, but then also do so in the lens of practicing our faith. And I think going on those trips and just being a part of the Lasallian community at St. Mary's just really inspired me. And just the witness of the brothers who have given their life to service in the Lasallian charism and building community really just was something that I was drawn to. And an experience I had that really moved me was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. I spent 2 months of the summer with the brothers. I lived in community with them in a program called Lasallian Teacher Immersion Program. And Brother Frank was a part of that. Brother Larry also took part. Brother Stephen Markham, who I'm sure many of you have met. They were all part of this program where young men who were interested in being educators spent time with the brothers in community, and we did some of our field experience in different Lasallian ministries throughout the country. And so we spent a number of weeks in St. Louis, a number of weeks in Chicago, in Philadelphia, and then finally in Rhode Island, just observing different ministries, getting to know teachers, getting to know students, and doing so in the context of community. So we participated in the brothers' prayer life, just making meals for one another and just living that real sense of community. And I really just felt at home in the community of the brothers. And of course, I think I remember it was Brother Frank at the time who was very adamant, oh, you should join, our contact program because I think you'd be a great brother. And at the time when I was graduating from St. Mary's, I wasn't quite ready to make that commitment. But during that summer that I spent with the brothers, one of the places that we visited was actually Memphis, Tennessee. And I got to meet the brothers there in two different communities. And I noticed that they were really involved in inner city education with the diocese there in these schools called the Jubilee schools, which were Catholic schools that had been closed throughout the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But then at the time in 2000, the bishop really made a push for the diocese and the community to reopen some of these inner city Catholic schools. And at the time, there was a program through the university there, the Lasallian University called Christian Brothers University, where young people like myself could come and live in an intentional community with one another, teach in these inner city Catholic schools, and then also earn a graduate degree from CBU. And that program was called LANCE, Lasallian Association of New Catholic Educators. And as a new teacher, somebody who was interested in especially inner city ministry, it was a great experience for me. Not only living in community with other people who were in their first and second year of teaching, but also being associated with the brothers community on campus. So we would have dinner with them once a week. And it was just a great time for us to share our experience, the joys and the challenges of being a first and second year teacher. And I really wouldn't trade that experience for the world. That really just for me confirmed my vocation as an educator. And just having that support just meant so much for me. So in my cohort, as we called them, there were 6 of us working in different Catholic schools. And by the time we finished, there were actually 3 of us that joined religious life. So I joined postulancy in the brothers at the end of that experience in 2015. One of the other young women, she joined the Daughters of Charity, and the third joined a Dominican order in Chicago. So just that intentional community experience, and then also serving in educational ministry and the support that we gave one another really helped foster our vocations, all 3 of us. And the other ones who were in our cohort too, they're all still involved in education. And so it was just really great to be with them, be associated with the brothers, and support one another. So when I joined the postulancy, it took me to a few different places. I went to Philadelphia for a while, and I studied at LaSalle University there, and I did some volunteer work at LaSalle Academy, an inner city middle school. But then I came back to Memphis, and I taught high school Spanish for a year and a half at Christian Brothers High School, which is an all-boys school in Memphis. It was kind of like, if any of you read much of the founder's story, it just, to me, it's felt much like some of the writings that he has shared with us, that one thing led to another, and I never realized, where I am today, that I would get to where I am today back when I said yes, in 2015. So I think really my vocation is just that continual saying yes. So I said yes to the postulancy. I said yes to returning to Memphis to teach again, continued saying yes, and joined the novitiate, which is our year-long formation program in the brothers in the summer of 2017. Spent a year in Chicago with 5 young brothers in formation, one of whom actually used to work at St. Mary's, Brother Mark. So some of you might know him, maybe the seniors, I'm not sure. There were 5 of us in our group, and we professed our first vows in the summer of 2018. And then after that, I returned to Memphis and I taught at CBHS. I taught Spanish and English for 2 more years. And then I was on a retreat in December of 2019, kind of an Advent parish retreat. And I was really just moved by the talks of the priest there. It's Father David Knight. Perhaps some of the brothers might know, he recently just passed away. But he had done a lot of missionary work in his life. And I just felt, I was just finishing 5 years of teaching in more traditional Catholic schools in the US. I just was ready for something different. Especially in these first few years of formation, I personally think it's important for us as young brothers to get an experience of life abroad, life somewhere else, just to see, okay, we're making vows, not just to our community, not just to our district, but really to this international institute. And I felt so welcome in Memphis. I had spent, over 5 years there and developed relationships, not only with the brothers, with my colleagues, but really with the students and their families. And so it really wasn't an easy decision to leave. But at the same time, I just knew that the time was right to try something different. And so just about a year ago, I came to Lebanon. Um, I think it was the first week of March, which for us was spring break. And that's kind of when, the pandemic sort of was starting in China and then also in Europe. But, in the US, we really didn't know much about it at that point. So I came to Beirut, and just as I arrived, that's when things started shutting down. But I was able to visit the community here at the Fratelli Project, which is where I am now, which is really a unique ministry. It was born out of the general chapter of 2014. And the general chapter is a meeting, international meeting of the leadership of the brothers. And so there was one for our congregation, the Salle Christian Brothers, but also one for the Marist brothers of the schools. So they had their own chapter and we had our chapter. And both chapters kind of came to a consensus that the call that they were putting out to our institute and to the Marist Institute was that, we're called, especially by the writings of Pope Francis, to really go beyond the borders and go to the peripheries, to go to a place where people are not serving. Because here in the Middle East, both the De La Salle brothers and the Marist brothers have been here since the 1840s, serving particularly the Christian community, but also the Muslim community as well. But this project really was born out of the Syrian refugee crisis and has since expanded to serve Iraqi and Palestinian refugees. But what we do here is we really create a place of encounter, and we also we've created an educational center to really serve the emerging needs of the refugee community here in Lebanon. So we are 4 brothers in our community, myself, 2 Spanish brothers who are Marist brothers, and then another De La Salle brother from Chad. And this community is also open to volunteers. And we had a volunteer here from the United States, from St. Mary's College of California last year. But this year, because of the pandemic and travel, it's been very difficult for us to recruit volunteers. So we're hoping in the coming year we can have more volunteers. But what we do here is, like I said, we try to create this space of encounter where we show the refugee population that they're not forgotten, that we come here from different countries to support this educational ministry. And we have about 15 different programs that we run here. Our largest program is our preschool program. We have 8 different sections of preschool. And what the preschool really allows these kids to be a part of is that it's their entry into the formal Lebanese education system. So because they're Syrians and they don't have all the rights of a Lebanese person here, they're not able to readily enroll into Lebanese school, even if they are born here. The majority of the refugees that we serve are not fleeing Syria anymore. They have been here for 5, 6, 7 years. So the majority are born here, yet they don't have any rights. And so by enrolling in one of our programs, preschool or one of the elementary or the middle school or high school programs, they're able to obtain a certificate, which allows them to then enroll in the Lebanese school system. And once they are enrolled in the school system, we provide continual educational support. We also have other programs. We have an English program. We have a technology program. We have a sewing program to teach young women a skill and a trade. We just started a program to teach young men plumbing and electricity, just so they can learn skills and they can get a job and better their lives. We have a new program that we just started as well for young women who are new mothers, so they learn how to take care of their children. So it's there's a lot going on here, and especially during the pandemic, we're trying the best that we can to continue to engage with our students and their families, although it's been very difficult. Most schools, as you all have done, have been able to transition to online education, but for us, it's been very difficult just because with the lack of technology. We're lucky if the families and the students that we serve have one cell phone, maybe two in the entire family. And so the majority of our outreach to them has been through WhatsApp, which if you've traveled internationally is a pretty well-known app, basically just for video calls and messages and things like that. So our teachers record messages, send them to the students, and they send their material and content back and forth. And so, what do I do here? It has been a challenge, not only with the pandemic, but also with languages. Coming here, I speak English, I speak Spanish, and so in the community, I'm okay. But here, the dominant language is Arabic. Some people speak French as well, and thankfully, some people also speak English. So when we were open, when I first arrived here in October, I was able to just sort of be that presence, because the brothers here are the ones that really animate the mission. And so when they see us, they see the mission continuing. And so I don't know that much Arabic, but I was able, to greet the students, to really support the teachers in any way that I can. But little by little, I'm learning more Arabic. I'm learning more French in particular. In our community, we have morning and evening prayer in a mixture of Spanish and French, because the brothers here, their English is not the strongest. So that's mainly what we do here at our project too, but we're also part of, like the larger Lasallian and the Marist network. And here in the Middle East, the Lasallian network here in Lebanon also includes 7 traditional schools, and most of them are French curriculum, K through 12 schools. But the brothers here are also known for their centers for special needs children, which is meeting a real need in this country because the public sector, the public schools really do not provide adequate services to children with special needs. But in this district here, we are 28 brothers, and the countries that this district includes are Egypt, Turkey, Lebanon, Jordan, and the Holy Land. And so most of the ministries that the brothers serve in here date back to the 1800s, early 1900s. And so when you go to the schools, it's a lot of French architecture, just French design in the schools, because it was the French brothers that came here. And I spent some time in Egypt back in January, where I was trying to get my visa issues figured out. So I was able to visit the schools there. They have 4 schools in Cairo and 2 schools in Alexandria. And they also have an interesting program in what they call Upper Egypt, which is actually in the south of Egypt on the Nile, where they work with the public school and they do catechesis in the afternoon, but they also teach trades. And so one of the French brothers there teaches woodworking to the boys. And they have what they call kind of a free library, a free traveling library, where the brothers go in the street in this little small town with a cart of books, and they go from house to house and they distribute books and they read to the kids in the street, which is just a great way to serve that population. Going to that community when I visited there, it was like stepping back in time. It was kind of what the US I envisioned was like back in the early 1900s. Not much in terms of running water or plumbing and that sort of thing, but just very simple people, a lot of them in the agricultural community, but just very, very passionate about their faith. And in that region in particular, there's been a lot of Christian persecution. And so the brothers' presence and the presence of other religious orders there has been a real help and a real witness to that community. But no matter where I go, whether I'm in the US or whether I'm in the Middle East, there's just a real sense of belonging and a sense of being at home when you're in a brother's community. You know that your needs are going to be taken care of, that you're going to be participating in community prayer, whether it's in English, whether it's in Spanish, whether it's in French. You eventually figure it out. But I feel at home no matter where I'm at. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to continue to serve with my brothers and serve in this ministry that we all dedicate our lives to. And there's a lot of hope. I know Brother Larry is doing vocation ministry now, but even here in the Middle East, we do have some young brothers and some vocations. When I was in Egypt, I was able to be at a mass where we welcomed a young man into the postulancy. And there's 3 young brothers here in Lebanon as well. And so there's a lot of hope moving forward. And this coming weekend, I'll be participating in a Young Brothers Assembly internationally. So I'm just curious to see, especially with the pandemic, how young brothers around the world have been coping, not only in their communities but also in their ministry. So that's kind of my story. I know I've been talking for about 20 minutes. So does anybody have any questions or anything I can clarify for you about my Lasallian story, my journey?
Questions, comments? Things you'd like to know about the Middle East or the brothers?
Have you had a chance to go to Jerusalem?
Have I? No, not yet. One of the issues that I face with that is I have quite a few Lebanese stamps in my passport now, and it's very difficult to go to the Holy Land with those stamps in your passport because of the war between the two of them. So I'll have to either get a new passport or wait till mine expires before I can do that. But I hope to someday.
So Matt, you made originally a 2-year commitment, is that correct?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did you make a 2-year commitment to this project? Do you want to explain a little bit about that?
Typically the brothers here, they make 3-year commitments. And so initially this project, when it was started in 2016, there were 2 brothers, a Marist brother from Spain and a De La Salle brother from Mexico. And they each made a 3-year commitment, and they both have renewed that 3-year commitment. The Mexican brother finished his last year, and the Spanish brother stayed an extra year just to with the continuity of the project. But because I'm in temporary vows, they suggested that I just make a 1-year commitment, and so that's what I'm fulfilling right now is my 1-year commitment.
And you'll be back this summer, probably, here in the US?
Yeah, I'm planning to come back this summer. I mean, I've had continued issues with my visa, just getting all that paperwork figured out during the pandemic when so many of these government offices have been closed. I still do not have a residency visa here. I'm still on a tourist visa for the second time. And so I will be returning to the United States when my visa expires, and then we'll see what happens from there. I would like to continue in the Middle East. So I'm kind of in conversation now to see what some potential opportunities would be for that.
Are the brothers in South Sudan, are they from that district also?
There is one brother from the Middle East district who is in South Sudan, but that I believe is, I think it's going to be part of like the English-speaking province of Africa, the Luanga district, I believe. And I think the project there is an international project, kind of like this project is here. And so from a technical standpoint, like we are not governed by the local province here. We're governed directly by Rome. And I think that project in South Sudan is similar to that.
You heard Matt talk about the Marist brothers. We're probably not real familiar with that because we don't have a lot of Marists. There's a lot of them in Chicago. Marist brothers, they're not very different from us. They're called the Marist brothers of the schools. And the nice thing about a project like this is that both of our orders are just brothers. As you know, there are some orders with brothers and priests. So it's kind of natural because both of us are dedicated to education to work on a project like this. So I think if you want to speak a little bit to what it's like to be a brother in a community with brothers from another congregation, that might help too as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I really have enjoyed living with the 2 Marist brothers that have been here. And not only do I live with them in community, but it also opens us up to the other Marist communities here in Lebanon. And throughout the Mediterranean. Their province runs from here in Lebanon all the way over to Spain, and so all the countries where they're serving. And so I've participated in meetings and formation and things with all of those brothers from around these different countries. And they, you know, Marist brothers are the brothers of Mary, so they have a very Marian devotion to their prayer style. And one of the brothers I live with, he's in his 60s now, but in the 70s and 80s when he was in formation and shortly after that, he was really big in pushing some of the Vatican II documents and the Vatican II movement in Spain. And he did a lot with music ministry. And so he has written a number of pieces and music for catechesis and for pastoral ministry, and a lot of it has Marian themes. And so we use a lot of the songs that he has written for our prayer. And interestingly, you know, our project here is called Fratelli, which means brothers in Italian, and it came out of from the general chapters of the two congregations, just to be that witness, not only here, but also that two congregations can come together and form a community. And so this is, you know, kind of a community formed by Rome, and they're planning to start a new program like this, I believe, in Colombia, also to serve the refugee population there from Venezuela. But the idea of Fratelli and starting these kind of mixed communities, as they're calling them, is also kind of popping up around the world. I know that there are two similar communities in Spain where there are Marist brothers and De La Salle brothers living together in community, serving in their traditional ministries, but just living together. And I'm curious to see, even in the United States, I know that there are a number of women's orders that are living in mixed communities. I'm curious to see down the road if more men's communities, including ours, are open to doing that. I think especially, as Brother Larry said, you know, we are an order of just brothers, and so are the Marists. There's so much of our daily life that is very similar. Our ministry is similar. Our charisms are very similar. Our prayer life is very similar. So I definitely think there's many opportunities for that.
Matthew, you used the term from Rome a couple of times. Can you explain to them, to the students, that Rome means our institute and not Vatican?
Correct. Yeah. So our institute, the Brothers of the Christian Schools, the institute is headquartered in Rome. We have a superior general who is an American, Brother Robert Sheeler, but he also works with a council. He has his vicar general, which is kind of like his number two, but he also has counselors, and there's one for each region. And so you all are in the Raylon region. So there's a counselor for that region, and there's one for the other 4 regions as well. And there's also 3 extra counselors that sort of have different roles. And one of those counselors, along with the vicar general, and then 2 of their kind of counterparts with the Marists, those are the 4 people on our council that sort of run our project and our community. So they are in charge of our pastoral needs as a brothers community, and they also are in charge of our needs in terms of the project, in terms of financing, in terms of animation of the works here. So most of our communities, like in the United States, the brothers would have like a community director who the brothers in the community could go to with questions or with concerns. And then after the director, you go to the visitor or the provincial of your district. But here, because we are an international community, we report directly to Rome. And so when we have issues or needs arise, we call one of our counselors in Rome who is responsible for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Any questions, comments? Maybe one parting comment, Matt. So can you speak a little, you've been chosen as one of the delegates for the International Young Brothers Assembly. Can you just address that briefly and what that's about and when it's happening?
Absolutely. So as I mentioned, that this project came out of a call from the general chapter back in 2014. So the brothers were scheduled to have a general chapter in May, this coming month, actually, of May 21, but they have actually pushed that back to May of 22. And what that chapter allows for is for the brothers to come together from around the world to elect new leadership and to really envision where are we as an institute going in terms of community life, in terms of our consecrated life, and in terms of our mission for the next 7 years. And so I have been asked to be part of the International Young Brothers Assembly, which is a separate assembly that brings together young brothers from around the world to sort of give our voice to the delegates that are at the general chapter. And so I will be participating in online meetings, I think once a month between August and December, with 4 brothers from the United States representing our districts, and then also brothers from around the world to come together, to meet one another, to share in our brotherhood, and then also give our collective voice of the young brothers of the Institute to the chapter, which will be held in May of 22. And then hopefully, if the vaccine rollout continues and whatnot, we're hoping to gather all of the young brothers from this assembly in Rome in, I think it's either October or November of 2022, to sort of look at the documents that come out of the general chapter. What did the brothers there who were at that meeting, what was the sort of consensus? What were the themes that came out of that? And how can we as young brothers live and animate those themes in our local communities?
Thanks, man. Not bad for a boy from Wisconsin. No, it's great. So I just want to let you know that any place that the brothers are in the world is also a place that potentially you can be. That there are ministries, as Claire knows, she was in dialogue for a while there. So realize that the LaSalle world opens up lots of possibilities for you in terms of volunteering, in terms of visiting. Even if you're in Rome for a while, our general agent has a hotel feature too, so it's a great place to stay. So I just realized that, I want you to realize that in 79 countries, Nuestra casa es su casa, okay? There's a place for you as a LaSalle. You know the pastor, let Jesus in our hearts. Okay. If you have any more questions for Matt, we'll let him go because it's still pretty early. Anything else you'd like to know from Matt? Thank you, Matt.
Yes, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. It's so good to spend time with you all. Again, my alma mater. I wish you all the best with the rest of your semester, and those of you graduating, I wish you all the best with your future as well. So hopefully our paths will cross again down the road.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
All right.
We'll let
Take
you
care.
go. Au revoir.